What I'm about to tell you will seem like a lie. It will seem like I'm making it up, but listen until the end because what the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want you to know is that there's a white powder that costs 3 reais that solves what 300 reais pills can't. And that powder is in your kitchen right now. It's called baking soda. In the next few minutes, I'm going to prove it to you mechanism by mechanism. Why men over 60 who ignore baking soda are letting their vitality die due to a lack of absurdly simple information, but not in the way you imagine. I'm Dr. Natália Castro, and before the end of this video, you'll understand why your body is stuck and what can unstick it. But I need you to stay until the end, because if I give you the answer now without showing you what's behind it, you won't believe it. And if you don't believe it, you won't use it. And if you don't use it, nothing changes. So start with me. After 60, something happens that almost no one explains properly. It's not just testosterone dropping. It's not just metabolism slowing down. There's a process that acts in layers, silently destroying the systems that ensure your body functions. And the worst part is that this process has a fuel that most men are providing every day without knowing it. That fuel is called metabolic acidity. I'm not talking about heartburn. I'm not talking about reflux. I'm talking about a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the internal chemical balance of your blood. An acidity that builds up slowly over years, fueled by modern diet, chronic stress, the aging process itself, and when it reaches a certain point, it starts collecting a cruel toll. But I haven't told you the most important part yet, and I won't tell you yet, because to understand the solution, you first need to understand the real size of the problem. And the size of the problem is much bigger than you're imagining right now. Let's start with circulation, because that's where everything starts to crumble. Your blood needs to maintain a very specific pH, around 7.4, slightly alkaline. This isn't optional. Your body does everything to keep that number. But when acidity starts to accumulate, even if the variation is minimal, the consequences are devastating in a cascade. The first thing that happens is your blood gets thicker, literally denser, harder to circulate. The red blood cells, which are responsible for carrying oxygen to every tissue in your body, lose flexibility. They become rigid, and when they're rigid, they can't compress to pass through the finer vessels. Now think with me. What are the finest vessels in your body? Exactly the ones that irrigate the tissues responsible for intimate response. Thick blood, rigid red blood cells, fine vessels. The mathematical result of that is a compromised response. Not due to lack of desire, not due to emotional issues, but pure physiology, biochemistry. Your body doesn't have a motivation problem. Your body has a delivery problem. And here comes the first loop I need you to carry with you as you follow the rest of the video. If the problem is circulation, and circulation depends on pH, what happens when you correct the pH? The answer will surprise you, but it's not time for it yet, because first, you need to understand the second level of the problem, which is even more serious. Imagine you have a delivery truck. That truck is the red blood cell. The cargo it carries is oxygen, and it needs to deliver that cargo to the tissues. But there's an internal mechanism in that truck called hemoglobin, which is the molecule that literally holds the oxygen inside the red blood cell until the moment of delivery. Here's the problem that almost no one tells you. When the environment is acidic, hemoglobin grips the oxygen and doesn't let go. It's like the driver arrives at the destination, opens the truck door, but can't release the cargo from his hand. The tissue is left starving for oxygen. And a tissue starving for oxygen can't respond, can't generate firmness, can't sustain vitality. Do you see what's happening? It's not just the amount of blood that arrives. It's whether that blood can deliver what it needs to when it arrives. And in an acidic environment, it can't. Two completely different circulatory problems, two levels of silent destruction. And no doctor explains this in a routine consultation because it takes time, because it's complex, and because the healthcare system wasn't built for that level of depth. But you need to know, and I need to tell you one more level before revealing what can change all of this. Because there's a third layer in this silent destruction, and it's the most treacherous of all. It has a name. It's called low-grade chronic inflammation. It's not the inflammation you know. It's not a swollen ankle after a sprain. It's not a sore throat during the flu. It's an invisible, microscopic inflammation that acts inside your blood vessels every day, that you don't feel, and that silently corrodes a layer that's absolutely essential for everything we're discussing here. That layer is called the endothelium. It's the inner lining of your vessels, a layer of cells as thin as a hair strand, but responsible for one of the most critical functions in the male body. A healthy endothelium produces a molecule, a single molecule that's the master key to the entire male intimate response. Without it, nothing works. With it functioning well, everything organizes. Comment below from what city you're watching, because I get men from all over Brazil asking me exactly about this, and I want to know where you're from while I tell you the name of this molecule. This molecule is called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the chemical signal that tells the artery muscles, relax, open, let the blood flow in volume. It's the key that opens the floodgate. Without it, the floodgate stays locked. No matter how much desire you have, no matter how much testosterone circulates in your blood, if the floodgate doesn't open, nothing enters. And what destroys your body's nitric oxide factory? Two enemies you now know: metabolic acidity and chronic inflammation. They work together. Acidity feeds inflammation. Inflammation damages the endothelium. Damaged endothelium stops producing nitric oxide. Without nitric oxide, the intimate response crumbles, and the cycle closes, feeds back on itself, and gets worse over time. I've seen this cycle in hundreds of men like Reynaldo. Reynaldo came to me at 65, a retired engineer, active, no history of serious illnesses, exams within normal range, stable blood pressure, testosterone in the expected range for his age. Everything apparently fine. But for 2 years, the intimate response had gradually disappeared, without apparent explanation, and he was starting to believe it was permanent. I looked beyond the standard exams, at his eating pattern, stress level, subclinical signs, and saw exactly what I see often: a body in metabolic acidity crisis, with installed chronic inflammation, with overloaded endothelium. I proposed something he wasn't expecting: a morning protocol with an ingredient everyone has at home, and he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. 3 weeks later, he sent me a message, but I'll tell you what was in that message later, because first, you need to understand why this ingredient works, and more, you need to understand something that most videos on men's health completely ignore. Because so far, I've talked about circulation, oxygen, inflammation. But there's an organ being silently destroyed by all this acidity that has a direct impact on your most important hormone. I'm talking about the liver. The liver is the hormonal maestro of your body. It's what processes, metabolizes, and balances all hormones, including testosterone. But the liver has another function that few know. It's one of the main ones responsible for neutralizing metabolic acidity. When the acid load gets too high, the liver goes into survival mode. It diverts energy from hormonal metabolism to try to control the chemical balance. The result? The balance between testosterone and estrogen deregulates. And when that balance is lost, desire drops, energy disappears, the physical response weakens. But the problem doesn't stop at the liver, because while the liver is overloaded, there's another hormonal bomb active in your body, a bomb called visceral fat. That belly many men accumulate with age isn't just aesthetic, it's functional. It produces an enzyme that does something you need to know now. That enzyme is called aromatase, and what it does is convert testosterone into estrogen, literally your male hormone being transformed into female hormone inside the fat cells of your abdomen. And there's a cruel detail in this story. An acidic body has more tendency to accumulate visceral fat, and more visceral fat means more aromatase. More aromatase means less free testosterone, and less free testosterone means less desire, less energy, less vitality. It's a cycle that closes layer by layer, silence by silence. And I haven't finished yet because there's one more level I need to show you. And this is the one that impresses me most when I look at the complexity of the problem. Even if you corrected all the circulation, balanced all the inflammation, restored the endothelium, nitric oxide, liver, and hormones, there's still a chance your body can't use the available testosterone. Because with aging, the testosterone receptors in cells can become resistant. Stop hearing the signal. It's exactly like insulin resistance. The hormone is there circulating, but the cells no longer respond. Imagine someone shouting in a room with the sound turned up high. The voice is there, but the noise prevents it from being heard. Metabolic acidosis is one of those noises. It interferes with receptor sensitivity. It leaves cells deaf to the testosterone signal. And then even men with testosterone in the ideal range continue without response, without energy, without vitality. Because the problem wasn't the amount of hormone, it was the cell's ability to hear it. If you're feeling like something doesn't add up, that the exams are normal but the body isn't responding as it should, this might be exactly the mechanism missing from the equation. And this is where I want to pause, because if you're following this content and realizing that what I'm describing makes sense for what you're experiencing, I've prepared material that goes beyond what I can explain in this video. It's a complete medical guide to avoid the mistakes that damage the prostate after 60. Available for free in the pinned comment right below this video. Go straight there after you finish because it's material that complements everything I'm showing you here and can protect you from mistakes men make without knowing. But back to it, because there are still two mechanisms I need to show you before giving you the protocol. And the first one will surprise you because it involves an organ you'd never imagine connected to intimate health. I'm talking about the gut. Inside your gut live trillions of bacteria. This ecosystem, which experts call the microbiome, regulates practically everything in your body, from neurotransmitter production to systemic inflammation levels. When the intestinal environment gets too acidic, beneficial bacteria suffer, harmful ones proliferate, and then a serious problem starts. Harmful bacteria produce toxins. These toxins can cross the intestinal wall when it's compromised and fall directly into the bloodstream. And when bacterial toxins enter the blood, what happens? Systemic inflammation. The same inflammation that damages the endothelium. The same one that blocks nitric oxide. The same one that sabotages the intimate response. Compromised gut feeding inflammation, which destroys the endothelium, which blocks nitric oxide, all connected, all feeding each other. And the second mechanism left to explain has to do with energy. Cellular energy, the fuel your cells use to generate the intimate response. Inside every cell of the tissue responsible for firmness, there are microscopic structures called mitochondria. They're your body's power plants. And for the response you need to happen, these mitochondria need to generate enormous amounts of energy very quickly. But when the environment is acidic, mitochondria lose efficiency, produce less energy, and produce more toxic waste, the so-called reactive oxygen species that damage cell membranes, proteins, and even DNA. In an acidic environment, this damage multiplies. It's like trying to start a car with a dead battery. The will is there, the ignition turns, but the engine doesn't catch. And now, finally, we've reached the point I needed you to reach with all this understanding built. Because the solution I'm going to present isn't a medicine, isn't an expensive formula, isn't an imported protocol. It's a simple, cheap mineral compound that's probably in your kitchen right now. And when used correctly, it triggers a cascade of reactions that hits every mechanism I've described. I'm talking about baking soda. But before you think I'm suggesting grandma's home remedy, I need you to understand what happens biochemically when it enters your body. Baking soda is a natural alkalizer. When ingested in the right dose on an empty stomach, it helps neutralize excess acidity in the blood. And when the pH normalizes, it's like unclogging a road that's been congested for years. The first effect: blood becomes less viscous, more fluid. Red blood cells regain flexibility, oxygen starts being delivered efficiently, tissues begin receiving what they need to function. The second effect, hemoglobin releases the oxygen. Remember the truck that couldn't unload the cargo? With corrected pH, it arrives at the destination and delivers everything, not half, everything. The difference in the tissue is immediate. The third effect, inflammatory load drops. Baking soda has anti-inflammatory properties documented in scientific studies. It reduces the production of inflammatory cytokines, the molecules that sustain low-grade chronic inflammation. Less inflammation means healthier endothelium. Healthier endothelium means more nitric oxide production, and more nitric oxide means open floodgates. The fourth effect, the liver breathes. With less acid load to neutralize, the liver returns to dedicating itself to hormonal metabolism. The balance between testosterone and estrogen starts to restore. The hormonal profile improves, not because you took hormones, but because your body stopped wasting resources. The fifth effect, mitochondria work better. The corrected environment allows the power plants to operate at maximum efficiency. Fewer toxic wastes, more energy available. And baking soda participates directly in the energy production cycle inside the mitochondria. You're not just cleaning the environment, you're providing raw material for cellular energy generation. And there's a sixth effect that few mention, and that for me is one of the most important. Chronic stress keeps your nervous system in a state of permanent alert, what experts call sympathetic mode, fight or flight. And that mode closes the floodgates, directs blood to muscles and brain, reduces flow to everything the body considers non-essential in that moment. An acidic environment maintains that alert state. It's as if the body is convinced there's a constant threat. And in that state, the intimate response is simply incompatible. The body doesn't allow it. By correcting the pH, baking soda has an indirect calming effect on the nervous system. It favors balance between the two systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic. It allows the relaxation mode to take control when necessary. And it's exactly that mode that opens the floodgates. Remember Reynaldo, the retired engineer who looked at me skeptically when I proposed the protocol? The message he sent me 3 weeks later said that he had woken up that morning with something that hadn't happened in over 2 years. A spontaneous response, without direct stimulus, without effort. The body simply responded as it does in an organism with healthy circulation. He was so surprised that he lay there staring at the ceiling for a while, unable to believe it. In medicine, we call this nocturnal and morning tumescence, and it's a clinical marker of vascular health. When it returns, it's not coincidence. It's a sign that the pelvic vessels are clean, flexible, and functioning as they should. It wasn't an expensive supplement. It wasn't an imported formula. It was his body responding to a rebalance that had been pending for years. And now the protocol is simple, but the simplicity needs to be respected. Dissolve between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda in a glass of warm water. Not cold, not hot, warm. Add the juice of half a freshly squeezed lemon. The lemon might seem contradictory because it's acidic, but once metabolized in the body, lemon has an alkalizing effect. And besides, it's rich in vitamin C and antioxidant bioflavonoids that protect the endothelium. The combination is synergistic, much more potent than baking soda alone. Take it on an empty stomach in the morning. Wait at least 20 minutes before eating anything. It's not possible to substitute the lemon with boxed juice. It doesn't have the same effect. It has to be freshly squeezed. And there's an alternative for those who can't tolerate lemon. A teaspoon of organic apple cider vinegar. The metabolic principle is similar. Now, about what to expect and when. In the first week, the first signs usually appear in digestion and general disposition. More lightness, less post-meal fatigue, deeper sleep. These are signs that the system is starting to respond. Changes in intimate response generally appear between the 3rd and 8th week of consistent use, because your body didn't go out of balance overnight. It took years, and restoration also takes time. Patience isn't optional. It's part of the treatment. Arnaldo came to me at 72, hypertensive, controlled with medication. His blood pressure was stabilized, but intimate function remained compromised, and he had given up expecting a change. He started the morning protocol. In the 6th week, he called me, said his wife had noticed a difference before he did, that something had changed in how he moved, how he was present, in the energy he transmitted, and that in intimacy, for the first time in a long time, he had felt whole. This isn't placebo. This is the body responding when it receives the basic conditions to function as designed. Before I let you go, I need to be honest about the limits. If you have uncontrolled hypertension, severe kidney disease, severe heart disease, or are on a strict sodium-restricted diet, talk to your doctor before starting this protocol. For the vast majority of healthy men or those with controlled conditions, it's safe and well tolerated. But every organism is unique and deserves individualized attention. And there's a common confusion I need to clear up before closing. Many men think the problem is lack of testosterone, so they seek testosterone as the solution. But if the vessels are compromised, if the endothelium is inflamed, if nitric oxide isn't being produced, if mitochondria have reduced efficiency, testosterone will circulate without destination, like an order no one can execute because the infrastructure is destroyed. The protocol I showed you doesn't replace any treatment you're already doing. It works at the base, in the biochemistry, in the internal environment that makes any treatment truly work. Everything I described in this video connects: the pH, circulation, oxygen, inflammation, endothelium, nitric oxide, liver, hormones, mitochondria, gut, nervous system. They're not separate problems. They're knots in the same network. And when you untie the central knot, metabolic acidity, the entire network starts to reorganize. It's not magic, it's chemistry. The human body functioning as designed when minimum conditions are restored. A glass of water with baking soda and lemon every day on an empty stomach for at least 8 weeks. It seems like little for so many mechanisms. That's exactly why it works, because when you intervene at the right point, the effect multiplies in a cascade. If this type of content made sense to you, if something I said today illuminated something you were feeling without understanding, subscribe to the channel, because here we talk with depth and clarity about what most professionals don't in consultations. Every week there's new content, and the next information I show you could be as important as this. Your vitality hasn't ended.